Good evening, good evening, good evening.
Good evening.
Welcome to another edition of Real World News TV. I'm your host, co-host Reggie Kearney, and we have my other co-host with us tonight, all the way back from Ireland. And y'all excuse her, she's got a little sniffle tonight. Breathing
Oh,
the fresh air in Ireland. We got
hmm
Sharon Tappet. Sharon, how you doing tonight?
I want to go back. I want to go back. I tell you, as you said, I am just back from Ireland. I'm still on Ireland time, so for me, it's about 1:30 in the morning. A beautiful country, lovely people, and it was just a balm on the soul, refreshing to be away from American politics, all the nonsense and bullshit that's going on over here, have some
Hmm.
fresh food, not Monsanto redesigned food, real meat, real beef, real stew, real fish. It was almost like it's funny because my husband, when I met him, said that Barbados reminded him a great deal of Ireland, and I was like, what are you talking about?
Hmm.
But going there in his little town called Donegal in Letterkenny, I can actually see the resemblance, both in terms of the culture of the people, the diet, because they eat lamb and fish in Barbados as well, and even down to the style of some of the houses, and how small the houses are and narrow some of the roads are. It was like being at a home away from home, and you could see the influence of Irish indentured servants and um, tourists and expatriates who relocated to the Caribbean over the years. So it was a lovely holiday. But as you can hear, and as Reggie mentioned, coming back from all of that clean air to the gray muck that is New York City, I now sound like this. So I beg your pardon in advance for the occasional throat clearing and sniffing.
Okay,
I,
okay. So tonight's show is entitled "The Dismantlement of Black Rights." Okay, and the reason uh, we came up with this title is because I was on Twitter. I followed Joe Madison of SiriusXM Radio. He has his own show on there, and he's the host of that show. He made a statement, and he said, "I am outraged because I can see that this effort to slowly dismantle our rights and take us back, piece by piece, post by post. If you do nothing, you will allow it to happen." Okay. Now, based on the 14th Amendment, granted us in 1868, granted African Americans the rights to citizenship, and that's about all it granted us.
mm,
You know, crazy way because they didn't want us to vote, even though during Reconstruction we did hold a number of seats in the Senate and Congress, and a number of governorships in the South. But they didn't like it because we kept getting elected, so they took that away from us during Reconstruction, and then the rest is history. So you see, and I agree with Joe Madison, there is a shift taking place in this country, but I think we are blind to this shift because we're happy with um, with
thank you,
you
Mendel.
him and you still you see the shift you see the shift coming, okay, and you can feel the shift, but a lot of people aren't paying attention to the shift. And to hear Joe Madison say what he says was no surprise to me
Mhm.
because I see things changing in this country. And I think we need to wake up before it's too late. And then we have to start the fighting again for our civil rights. What you thinking about it, Sharon?
Oh, absolutely right. We've been doing this show now for 5 years. How long has it been?
I
Four
think it's
years?
long. It might be six or
It's
seven. It's been a long
it's
time.
been longer. Yeah, we've
Yeah.
been through the Trump administration, the Obama administration. We've been doing it for a while, and you know, eh, juxtaposed in all of our shows, I think, is this witnessing of the dismantling of our civil rights and liberties. And of course, our show focuses on the impact on the Black community and people of color. But at the end of the day, I think what people fail to realize is it starts with us, but inevitably it affects everyone. And I think that when Obama won, first when he ran, people poo-pooed, people pretended that they liked that. You see, we've progressed to such a point a black man can run for office, yada yada. But once he won, we got to see the true colors of a lot of those so-called supporters, and many of them shit a brick, if you'll pardon my French. And you saw this immediate uptick in um, legislation to negatively impact our ability to vote. Proposing making it illegal to bus people to polling stations, making it illegal to give them water or food or support those people who are waiting online for 7, 8, 9 hours just to exercise their constitutional given right to vote. We've seen an increase in criminalizing our freedom of speech and our right to protest, which our country is founded on when you think about it. Um, they have been chipping away at this for so long, and they distract us with stuff like um, the Will Smith slap, or what's going on with, I don't know, you throw a dart, hit a celebrity, they distract us with it. And while they're doing that, we're not seeing the legislation that they're proposing. Something else that's often really annoyed me too is how you can have a bill that's proposed with one subject, but the members of Congress or Senate don't want to pass it unless they can get their little add-ons added to it, which inevitably lead to a watering down of the original intent. And you see it even with the passage of the 14th Amendment, when they added language to it. The only way they could get it passed was to add language to it indicating that they would repudiate the Confederate war debt and help ensure that members of the Confederacy had representation in government, in Congress. And if they failed to ratify that bill, they would not have their representation. So I find it really interesting to see that a lot of the rhetoric from the so-called right, it seems like they are mirroring sentiments of the so-called lost cause of the South. And we're seeing this Confederate resurgence, which is behind, I think, a lot of the attempts to dismantle the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and a lot of the advancements that we've had.
Very true, very true. And you can look at some things that happen in our communities, and you can see change is coming. I think last week, or I don't remember the exact date, a black officer in Philadelphia was charged with shooting a white teenager, and the teenager got off his bike, and turned around and fired at the police officers. The police officer gave chase to the guy. In the process, he did throw away the gun. Okay, he put the gun down, but he kept running. Eventually, he fell down and he was laying on the ground, and the black officer shot him in the back on the ground. Now, the prosecutor in Philadelphia is saying that they have a law, a rule that states that the perpetrator has disengaged the arms and all this kind of stuff, and he's not armed and he's not a threat, that doing anything out of the ordinary is against the law. Okay, how many daggone black young men have been shot by police officers and they didn't have weapons on them? Okay, they
Mm-hmm,
dropped the weapons.
hmm
Um, I think it might have been Chicago where they followed a young man down the street
hmm
and he was walking away from him and they still shot him in the back. But those
hmm
officers got clear. It seems like when a black officer does something that goes against the norm, just like the black officer in Minneapolis or Detroit, I can't remember the place name, who shot the white tourist,
hmm
and you know, for to him she was a threat, but he got 14 years straight up, and I think what's his name might be out in 5 or 10 years. Show what is his name? I can't even remember the guy who
Derek
shot.
Chauvin.
Yeah, Derek Chauvin. It just shows the difference how we are viewed and how we are treated in situations that when they participate in those situations, it's no big deal.
Of course, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
we're their backup, their fail-safe.
Yeah.
They can use us as the example and say, "Hey, look, we hold ourselves accountable."
Hmm.
But the blue wall doesn't exist for them
No.
unless it's one of their tokens um, that bends the law and protects them and hides their shit.
Hmm.
But at the end
Yeah.
of the day, unfortunately, the hypocrisy. They've never made an attempt to hide the hypocrisy. We see it in every aspect of our daily waking lives,
Yeah.
right down to, the anti-abortion bill. A
Hmm.
lot of these men in Congress, these old men and old women who are long past their fertile years, making legislation that directly impacts our lives, but God forbid their lover gets pregnant. Yeah, sure, they can get an abortion, not a
Hmm.
problem.
Hmm. You
So
know.
the hypocrisy is in every aspect of
Yeah.
the judicial system.
And excuse me, that's another area of concern that I have. And I'll be honest with you, I'm not a supporter of abortions. But what I am a supporter of is a woman's right to decide on what she wants to do, okay?
Hmm.
It's her body. And I think we all should have that right to decide on how we handle our bodies. The reason I have a concern for any laws that come out and ban abortion is because it puts this country on a slippery rock where they'll start tearing away at certain laws, okay? Because they can get the support of the Supreme Court because the Supreme Court is very conservative. Who's not to say they might not come down the road 5, 10 years from now and try to take away our right to vote or limit our rights to vote? Okay, that's what the scary slope is. Now, every time I talk to a Republican, the first thing they say, no, they won't do that. I say, man, let's get off that BS because they will do it.
Hmm.
Because
They'll try it.
my thing is, if the Republicans gain control of the House and the Senate, even if we are able to hold the White House with a Democratic president, they're not going to support the Democratic president. We saw that with Obama when they made Obama wait. Well, they just told him, look, it's a year to the presidential election. Let the next president, pick someone for the Supreme Court. Okay, so you see where their thought process is. Okay, where they're willing to tear down gains that have been made over the last 50 years to pleasure themselves. Okay. And that's where we're going. And we got to wake up. Black America has got to wake up and see the writing on the wall before it's too late. Because anything they can do, I mean, they're already doing it in our school systems.
Hmm.
With the Board of Education and how they're trying to take over the Board of Education. They don't want anything taught about blacks in the schools. They don't want their kids to be made to feel ashamed of what their ancestors did to Africans when they brought them over here to this country and made them slaves.
But they're not worried about the psychological impact of African Americans having to learn their history as though it starts with slavery,
Hmm.
and not the great advances that they made in Africa, such that Europe benefited
Hmm.
from the academic, intellectual advancements and development in Africa.
Yeah.
God forbid they change that narrative. But it's okay for us to feel like shit
Hmm.
because in their minds that's all we are or ever will be. Some of them believing that narrative, some of them enforcing that narrative despite the fact that they know otherwise.
Yeah. I mean, even in Florida, along with some of the other dumb bills that they have, uh, you they didn't want 1619 taught in the schools. They didn't want critical race theory, which has never been taught in the schools taught. So they're telling corporations that they can't have seminars or sessions on uh, that deal with race in the company, deal with on how to handle race relationships and things of that nature, because they don't want white folks to feel ashamed of what they might be doing or what they might be perceived as being racist or not. It's just the dumb stuff like that. And Republicans are accepting this, and we to a certain extent are accepting it because we're not raising our voices in a fit of rage to work against these bills that are being passed. These no nonsense bills.
Yeah, it's just, we're in the middle of a perfect storm. And, as a woman of color, I feel like we're also getting it from both ends. On the one hand, we're obviously negatively impacted by the slow and steady, or not so slow and steady, attempt to dismantle the Civil Rights Act, for and advances made by the 14th and 13th Amendment. But also, as a woman, you look at certain states like, what was it, Kansas, that wants to make it illegal for women to leave the state to get an abortion. So now you yourself become a vessel, what's the word I'm looking for? Basically owned by the state. Why would
Hmm.
any woman want to live in that state? And if they get away with doing that, then it will expand to other things. And I think we all need to go into this eyes wide open, and not think that it's not possible.
Mm-mm.
We're not the bastion of democracy that we've been taught we were. We're not the leaders of the free world that we thought we were. We are the country that set the example for Hitler to use when figuring out how to deal with the Jewish problem in Germany.
Hmm.
As we who read and studied history know, they came to the American. He sent representatives to the American government to learn how we handle the Native Americans and blacks in this country. That's how they learned that, and they expanded on it and made it even worse. So we're not the leaders of anything, except for maybe spin doctoring
Hmm.
what we do. And we like to make it seem like we're better than Putin, we're better than Russia, we're better than these other countries, but we're not really. We're just better at marketing ourselves as otherwise.
Hmm.
But it's getting worse and worse. And then you look at these wing nuts on the right who say, "Oh, we're going to become China," and they're saying that because they feel oppressed. But what they're complaining about in terms of being oppressed isn't actually oppression. They feel as though equality is oppression. They don't know the true meaning of oppression. Like this couple that got kicked off a JetBlue plane last week. Um, they fetishize the notion of victimhood because there doesn't really seem to be much else that unifies them other than their hate and sense of entitlement. But we need more to solidify ourselves, the diaspora, that is, the Black diaspora and people of color globally. As we've said in previous shows, we are the global majority, but we don't act like it.
Mm-mm.
And we don't feel empowered like a global majority. And we have to figure out a way to make that change.
Yeah. Well, we have so many missing links, and we're so disjointed. When you look at the continent of Africa, those countries can't even come together on common ground to make their resources work for them. You know, you see China going into Nigeria very strong, and taking the oil and the oil and diamonds and things of that nature. African countries can't even work together on one accord to get things done. So that's one of the problems we have. When you look at what's going on here in America, and you look at South Africa, I'm gonna say this: economically, blacks in America are far more wealthier than blacks in South Africa. But I feel like after all the hard work they have done in South Africa, even though they're struggling to develop an economic base in that country for blacks, I think they have more freedom and are freer than what we are. Okay, they have issues now. They have issues, but I think they can wake up every morning breathing more of a side relief in what we can because we're faced with a constant struggle every day in this country. So when you look at our form of government, it's a great form of government, but ideology has split this country. Republicans want one thing, and Democrats want one thing. None of them can come back to the middle like they did back in the old days. Tip O'Neill and all those old guys, when they worked hard to pass across the line, across the aisle, give some, take some, give some, take some. They made it work. Now we're in a
Yeah.
country now where, hey, if you don't pass my agenda as a Democrat, then hey, you ain't not going. You just ain't hitting on nothing. If you don't pass my agenda as a Republican, you the boogeyman. Okay.
I don't even know if I'd call today's Republicans Republicans anymore
Even
because
Democrats. I mean, you.
I was never a supporter of
Mhm,
the Republican agenda to begin with. I always did lean liberal. I'm an independent. But today's so-called Republican, to me, are yesterday's Confederates. And they've made it really apparent that they are pro-Confederate, pro-white supremacy, misogynistic, anti-women, anti-rights,
mhm,
anti-liberty, you know, teabag. What was that? What was that? Was it the tea bags? I forget. The Conservative Party from
the
like 10
Tea
years
Party.
ago.
Yeah.
Um, incel, whack jobs.
Hmm.
And they want to remake this country in their image, and unfortunately their image includes Marjorie Green, Bogart, and all of those other idiots and gays. That
Hmm.
image includes legalizing child marriage on the one
Hmm.
hand, while pointing the finger and calling other people pro pedophile. I mean,
Hmm.
it's just insane.
But you also got to look at the faults of the Democratic Party. Okay, the Democrats are running so far to the left that if the Democrats were in control, you wouldn't even know this is America. Okay, because you know we before you can have a society or a country where you want to give away a lot of free stuff, okay, like free hospitals, free education, things like that. You need to figure out how do you pay for this stuff? How do you pay the salaries of the college professors? How do you afford this? European countries were designed this way, okay? Once they came out of World War II, that's how they designed themselves. They set themselves up to be socialist countries, okay, to provide for their people, okay, and that's what they've always done. Here in America, because we're a capitalist society, it would be hard to turn the tables and say, this is what we're going to do.
I think we're going to get to a point where we have no choice. I really do. I mean, if we remain this cutthroat capitalist, we're falling apart at the seams,
Mhm,
and it's the haves versus the have-nots. The middle class isn't what the middle class today isn't what the middle class was 40, 50 years ago. You can't be a bus driver and save money, a single income household, and buy a four-bedroom house. It can't be done.
mhm. Well, you can't even rent.
Unless you luck out, you can't even rent.
Yeah,
Exactly.
you can't even rent. I
So
mean,
I think this notion of capitalism is snowballing to a point where it's going to be unsustainable.
but then you're going to end up, we're going to be one of the weakest countries in the world. Reason being, because it takes capital to move the economy along, okay? Once you start dismantling capitalism, how do you replace those funds, okay? You know, you still have got to if you're gonna give free medical assistance, you still got to pay for equipment. You still got to pay salaries. You still got to do A to Z. Okay, you got to do that. We haven't figured that out yet. Now, many states now are allowing they're fixing it so uh, high school graduates can go to 2-year colleges free. Okay, it's a begin, it's a step. They're designing the budgets where the budgets will uh, take on that responsibility in the states. But you can't just wholesale say one more you're gonna wake up, you're gonna pass a bill, everything is free. You
No, I'm
don't
not
do that.
suggesting that, and we may be getting a little off topic, but
Mhm,
I do have to say we are constantly told it is not possible. Whereas we
mhm,
see They're it's not a black and white question, no pun intended.
Mm-hmm.
We do have a larger population than many of the countries that we're looking at that do succeed operating on a socialist bent.
Mm-hmm.
But that said, I think that in many instances we have more resources than some of these countries. We have more to bank against. We have more products that we can sell internationally. We have more resources that we can barter with. Um, but we also do things like allow Elon Musk and Gates and the Amazon schmuck and all of those other people to not pay billions of dollars in taxes to this country, to take jobs out of the country and use slave labor in other countries. You know, there are things that we can do and should be doing that are pro American that would bring money back into our economy. It is not impossible. It just means that those greedy motherfuckers on top need to sacrifice. How many billions is enough? Like, there's got to be a threshold. And you know me, I've made this comment before. We contribute more towards our military industrial complex than many countries combined. And I just don't know that that's necessary, especially when you look at the fact that the excess is being bought up by municipalities and being used against us as if
Mm-hmm.
we're living in an occupied country. So it is possible. But because we have greedy people on the top, including lobbyists who lobby on behalf of Bezos and Gates and um, Amazon and all of these other companies, it is in their best interest to maintain the system the way it is. Because as long as we're struggling to survive on a day to day basis, we're too distracted trying to survive to work towards finding solutions to fixing this country.
But it's still, even that economic development also affects our rights as blacks, because when you look at the bigger picture, we can't support ourselves by purchasing a house. It's rent is sky high. A lot of things. I think before you go to a society where you're giving away free, take care and fix the things in the society to make people's lives a little easier. How
Absolutely.
yeah,
Absolutely.
how high is how far can you go with charging somebody rent on a two-bedroom apartment? I mean, you got in New York
It's
City
ridiculous.
now. I was looking at a survey the other day. You got one bedrooms in some areas. If you decide to stay in those ritzy areas, renting for $4,000 a month.
You don't even need a ritzy area in New
I
York for
mean,
it to
gosh,
be
I
that
can't even.
much.
Lord have mercy. If I had to live in New York, I would be homeless. I mean,
It
it's just
it's an
bottom line.
impossible. So you look at last year, right? We
Hmm.
all got slammed with like Con Ed went up like 300% for
Hmm.
everybody. Our Con Edison bill, normally speaking, max would have been $165 maximum,
Hmm.
maybe in the summertime when you're running
Hmm.
the AC. It's a
Hmm.
600 square foot apartment. Guess how much my Con Ed bill was last month?
Double,
No,
triple.
no,
How much was it?
16 fucking $100 for a
Why is
studio
that?
apartment. It was all over the news, and I thought, no, that's not going to happen to
Hmm.
us. It's a small studio apartment.
Hmm.
You have that. Then you have the tax bill that Trump signed, giving
Hmm.
everybody the impression that taxes were going to be lowered, when in
Then they
fact
want.
it was written so that it would go up the year he left office because he knew he was going to lose.
Hmm.
By hook or crook, he tried to steal it, but he knew he was going to lose. So he set that up so Biden would look the bad guy. Our taxes filed together, astronomical.
Hmm.
So just when you think, and then of course the surgery that I had. So just when you think that you've managed to save and you could start dreaming about the future and things you want to do,
Gone.
you have to use your savings to get
Hmm.
yourself out of the fucking hole.
Yeah.
So, living in these cities, it's becoming an impossible thing. Another reason why I dream about, I'd slap meat in a deli if I could live the way my in-laws live in Ireland. The corporate ladder just doesn't seem as attractive anymore when you realize that climbing that ladder is not going to get you out of the hole that you're in, because the system is set up to keep you there. So
Hmm.
unless you can figure out a side hustle and a way to protect that money, because that's going to get taxed too, you're just a hamster wheel in a more decorative, blinged
Hmm.
out wheel, but you're still on the friggin' wheel.
Yeah. But the community that's most affected about by the economy is the black community.
Hmm.
Okay, because you got a lot of families that can't afford $1,000 a month on a two-bedroom apartment. They're
With
struggling
kids.
to
Yeah.
do that. Yeah, with
Yeah.
kids.
Yeah.
You know, the jobs. I mean, uh, they were talking on the news tonight. There are 11.5 million job openings in this country. Where are they at?
Yeah.
You know, we still, granted, unemployment is down to 3%, but see, what that unemployment doesn't show, the unemployment rate doesn't show people who are just giving up on finding jobs. And black unemployment is always about 3%, 4% higher than the average, the American average. Okay, so
Yeah.
we're still struggling to find our place. So there are a lot of things that are working against us to uh, to hurt us. And I think that one reason you see so many kids participating in crime these days, is black kids participating in crime, they see no hope because they don't see hope at home.
Yeah.
You know, when you see your parents coming in and sitting there holding their head in hand, looking at the electric bill, trying to figure out how to keep the lights on, and you just got a jar of peanut butter in the refrigerator and some white bread to fix. You know, when you see your parents struggling, there's no hope for you because
Yeah.
you don't see a future.
How few of us have managed to acquire generational wealth so that we can help lift up the next generation? And we're struggling.
It's tough. I
Yeah.
mean, it's tough. That's why if you want to go into a field now that make you a lot of money, the life insurance field is a good field to be in,
Mm.
because what's happening, a lot of people, black and white, in order to leave something for their kids or family, some type of generational wealth, they'll turn into life insurance policy. You know, where you can, maybe do a 200 or $300,000 life insurance policy that can probably, once you pass away, give your family or your kids or grandkids a jump start in society.
As long as you read the fine print to make sure that
Hmm.
there are no caveats about how you die or when you die.
Well,
And
most of them, if you commit suicide, the majority of them just not going to pay off. Okay, that's
yeah,
just the bottom line of it. But for
yeah,
most
but
of it,
some of them are real shysters, right? So if you eat
mhm,
hamburgers every day and you die of a coronary, can they
yeah,
say that you committed suicide? Because they'll try it.
yeah, yeah.
You know they will.
But for the most part, most of them pay off. But that's that's an industry that's growing right now. If we had, if we didn't have to pay the rent and the interest on loans that we have, regardless of what your color is, you could save money.
Yeah.
You could go out and put money aside. I look at my parents when they came up, and I look at when my father passed away, and we were looking at his will and what he had accumulated. I was surprised as crap that he had accumulated what he accumulated. You know, because it was easy for him to do during that time,
Yeah.
because things weren't high, sky high like they are now.
Well, also too, there was a big cultural difference, I think, between the generations.
Mhm.
Your father's generation knew what it was to sacrifice, knew what it was to have less and get more, and
Mhm.
to save for that rainy day. I did a tour in a museum, interactive museum in Ireland. It
Mhm.
was really informative and great, and I recommend everybody do it. And they said that there was this little thatch roof house that all told couldn't have been more than 800 square feet, that was occupied up until 1980 something in a fishing village.
Mhm.
And, you know, white painted, I don't know what kind of brick, cement, mud, whatever it was, and a hearth and a bed in the kitchen, and very, very uber simple living. And he
Mhm.
said that they were able to live that way until the 80s because they didn't really have TVs. So they didn't see what the other people had. They didn't see the newfangled gadgets, widgets, and bling
Mhm.
that would tempt them to want more than they had. And we've talked about this a lot in other shows.
Mhm.
One of the downfalls of living in a capitalist society is that we are fodder for the gristmill. You know, we work to make money so that we can feed it back into a capitalist system, buying shit we don't need. And as long as we are sold on this notion that we need the latest widget, because it's going to make us look good, make us feel better, give us that pheromone high or whatever, we're not saving because we don't have the same experience with understanding the the benefit and the sense of accomplishment in sacrificing for the long haul, seeing the
Hmm.
big picture, to buy a house, to invest in land or property to bequeath to your next generation or whatever. So kudos to your grandfather,
No,
um,
father.
your father, excuse me.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that's something that our generation is missing.
But it comes back down again to not having the opportunities that many of our white counterparts have. I mean, you look at who holds down the service industry. Blacks, people of color, mainly hold down the service industry. I mean, you, most places now paying $15 an hour. If you live in the area, you're lucky if you're getting $20 an hour, depending on where you're living at, you know. But then when you get that check, you faced with a $2,000 a month rent, you know, and then utilities and water bills and stuff like that. You know, the system,
Food, insurance,
yeah. So the system
school.
has been designed to work against us. Then on top of that, you got Republicans trying to take away our voting rights, limit how we vote, when we vote, where we vote, and what we do, because they realize that again, compared to the Reconstruction and compared to now, they realize that a vote is a very powerful thing to have,
Hmm.
and that we as blacks we are using our right to vote.
Yeah.
You
Well,
know,
we've talked about in other shows what we can do to try to turn the tables. And we've often said, and we've often ended many of our shows, um, trying to inspire our community to run for office, to, on the municipal level to the executive level. Ketanji Jackson is now a member of the Supreme Court. God bless her. But I am heartened by the fact that there are so many people of color running for office in 2022. So, what we need to do now is get our people
mhm,
galvanized to go out and vote, whether
mhm,
it's for attorney generals, mayors, governors, representatives in the House or the Senate. That's the only way we're going to turn the tides, is if we can get the numbers in on a level where the legislation is being proposed and passed.
yeah. I mean, and I think too, when you look at the red states, there are enough people of color, blacks, to tip the scales to a certain extent in those states. Because a lot of us are not registered to vote. If you go into the large inner cities like in Houston, Dallas, the larger cities, there are probably a lot of people, a lot of blacks in those cities that are not registered to vote. Or if they are, they don't exercise that right to vote because they just feel they don't see any hope in voting. You know, if we could galvanize all those votes throughout the country, these voters to go out and vote once they register or get registered, we could turn the tide in a lot of these red states. You know, we could, I mean, it would be a no brainer. And that's why these Republicans are fighting so hard in these red states to limit our access to vote because they're saying, okay, we give them one Sunday to the polls, okay? And that's all we give them, or we cut back and take away some of the early voting places and cut the hours. And we say you can only do early voting from 12 to 5. Well, most of them working, they can't get there, or they come on a Saturday, the line's gonna be so long, they're gonna get disgruntled and work. And then on the day of election, the line's still gonna be long, so they're gonna get disgruntled and go home.
Yeah. How we, as a country that likes to call itself the leaders of democracy, haven't made it a national holiday where nobody has to work except for people in hospitals and
Mm,
certain service industries,
essential workers.
and can go in and vote or do what is necessary to make voting easier. And the funny thing is too is, while I wish that voting was easier, and don't
Hmm.
yawn, you're gonna make me yawn. Oh
I know.
God.
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
One of them
you
days.
got me. You got me. Um, we know, unfortunately,
Mm,
like, it'd be great if we could vote online, but we know that online can be hacked. It'd be great if there were other ways to do it. And where there is a will, there is a way. And we know that people with evil intent will always have the will to look for a way
Hmm.
to circumvent democracy. But it's very telling and demonstrative of their level of fear that they aren't even hiding the hypocrisy anymore. They're not even hiding their blatant attempts to gerrymander and make it near impossible for certain communities to vote and to disenfranchise people. And yet still talk out of the side of their mouth about democracy and free elections. But, as I've said in the past, it's easy for them to lie if they only consider themselves to be citizens, because
Hmm.
then they're not really lying.
Yeah.
They're speaking
Yeah.
to their base, fellow Proud Boy supremacists, and they are the only ones that count for them. Now, obviously, that's not true for all unmelanated people.
Hmm.
But right now, for many of those in office, just like we say with the police, if you say nothing, you're complicit. And I feel the same way about those in office, those Republicans who did not vote to um, impeach Trump, the Republicans who don't actively speak out about the disgusting behavior of some of the elected officials, those elected officials who don't speak out against Gates and Robert Moore, who had cases against them of child endangerment and inappropriate sexual activity with minors. I do not understand how these people, even in their own communities, can claim the mantle of righteous indignation and Christian morals and turn their backs on that.
Well, it's easy. It's easy because the people, the voters, accept whatever's happening. They turn their heads. They turn away from it. Even though they know it's wrong, they turn away from it. Yeah, Gates, but ought to be in jail somewhere in Florida right now. Okay, he knew that girl was a minor. He knew it, but they're going around Marjorie Green with her idiot, dumb, ignorant self, going around calling Democrats pedophiles. When you look at the Republican Party is a party of pedophiles.
Mm.
Okay, every time you turn around, when someone gets caught doing something crazy, who is it? They're a Republican.
More than likely, more
Okay,
often than not, yeah.
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 Democrats like taking cash. They try to move ahead in life. Their Republican Party is a bunch of sexual perverts. And if you go back and look and research, do your research, you'll see that.
Yeah.
They always is involved in something sexual, but they want to make the Democrats look like they're the crazy ones running around acting crazy and stuff.
Yeah.
And so their constituents just turn their heads. Just like now. I mean, before we close, I want to say this: we have the Reverend Ales and we have the others, uh, civil rights leaders out there. I just don't think they're fighting it hard anymore, and I think to a certain extent they're kind of just giving up,
Yeah.
and just letting things ride and hope that things gonna get better. Because in Florida, that little guy down in Florida who wants to be president one day, you
DeSantis.
the something else, okay? He decided to, you know, he gerrymandered, okay? And what he did, he took two black districts and split them up, okay? Diluted the black vote in each district, basically killing two districts in order to get two Republicans, okay? Where's the outrage because of that? I mean, you heard it in the news, and then I don't look at TV. And I look at TV. I don't look at 24/7. But I didn't hear Reverend L. Even on his show, he did a blur. But blacks are not outraged like they used to be. We've gotten too comfortable in the suburbs, driving our Bentleys, having our 10 or 15 TVs in the house. We feel like we have come. But like I said, if you don't keep your eyes open and you keep your ears to the point where you're listening, they're gonna slap. We're gonna wake up one morning and we're gonna say, "What happened to our rights, our civil rights?" Okay,
Yeah.
and that's what's gonna happen. And I see it happening. We don't start doing some more protesting, getting out, and voicing our opinion.
Yeah.
You know.
I mean, they're making it so much so that I think Many of us are gonna be forced with a choice, and I think about this all the time. In between trying to get some oxygen, excuse me. Um, do we stay and fight for the country that we want to love, for the country that this could and should be, or do we go someplace else in our later years where we can enjoy and comfort the remaining years that we have without having to struggle against this bullshit? And I think about it all the time. You know, living in another country, whether in the Caribbean, I mean, every country has their shit,
Hmm.
but there's a certain threshold I think you reach at a certain point in life, and do we want to stay here and continue the struggle and watch us succeed or fail, or go someplace where we can live in peace
Hmm.
finally for what few remaining years we have left? In the 60s, you had an exodus of people going to, what was it, New Nigeria, and places in Africa that have clearly stated that they would welcome us back with open arms. What did they say we were? The sixth, um, was it tribe? I forget what it was, but representative of all those of African descent who were taken and removed
Hmm.
from the continent. Um, because we deserve some peace. We deserve comfort. We deserve healthy food, fresh air, and not to feel the ever present psychic burden, emotional burden, and PTSD that we experience in this country on a day to day basis.
Hmm.
I'm fucking exhausted. So I think as things continue to get worse, because if we can't reclaim the House and the Senate and gain some more positions of authority on the municipal level in some of these states, it is only going to get worse, because the supremacists in this country hear the death knell of their numbers dwindling, and they are only going to fight harder, as anybody does when they're at that last leg.
Hmm.
They have nothing left to lose, so this could potentially get very, very, very ugly.
Yeah. Well, I see where you're coming from. Sometimes I think about moving to Ghana, but then why should I run away from what I enjoy in life, my luxuries that I have to leave here? But I think we got to have a new spirit among ourselves and get out and fight, like our ancestors. Well, not so much our ancestors, our parents years ago did. To bring about the civil rights,
Yeah.
the civil rights movement. I think we have, like I said, we have become too complacent. We have become too complacent, and they see that. They see we're very complacent. You know, it's just like in most countries, especially your Arabic countries and your Asian countries. What happened on January 6th? You would have got put before the firing squad. Okay, you just been rounded up, put before the firing squad for trying to be an insurrectionist. Okay, they thought those were the greatest people in the world that went up there and act like fools. But then they look at the Black Lives Matter movement as a movement of people that just want to burn down cities. You know, and I think there are a number of whites in this country, not all whites. I think there are a number of whites in this country that are scared of doing it, getting it right. Okay, of getting it right, and they want to maintain that control. They looking back. We came to America in what 16 whatever. Uh, came to Jamestown, or came to Plymouth Rock, and we started building this country. This is our country, okay? We ran the Native Americans out of the country. Then, we needed help, touring the land. So then we brought in our Africans. We went to Africa and pitted tribes against tribes to bring Africans to this country. This is our country. Why should we give in um, uh, to the black community? Well, I tell you one of the reasons that they should give into the black community. Heck, everything that was invented and created, probably about 80% of it was us.
True,
Okay,
true, true.
now I would love to. I'll leave the country, but when I leave, give me back my patents. You stop using everything that we designed. You even stop eating potato chips, okay? Because we we invented potato chips. Just give us back everything and see how you survive on trying to create something that we did, you're not smart enough. Okay, and some of
Well,
y'all dumb.
unfortunately, it's too late to do that.
I know, but
And
some of them are dumb as rocks because they weren't. Then they would be able to figure out how to get men up into space and get them back down. Wouldn't
but
have had
you
to
know,
on a black mathematician to figure out the formula on how to get John Glenn up and get John Glenn down. Okay.
look, in a generation that doesn't believe in science, um, I don't need any of our inventions back because in another generation they're not going to know how to use them anyway, so it doesn't really matter.
But
But
GPS,
when I have that conversation with myself about,
mhm,
staying and fighting or leaving, I kind of remind myself of sort of like when I leave a toxic place of employment.
mhm,
You know, you took a job, you tried to succeed there. There was a manager or a couple of coworkers that made your life a living hell. Your ego was invested in winning in that environment and saying, I'm right, you're wrong. um, whether that person gets fired or not, or you just survive and win, your ego is invested. And sometimes it's really hard to extricate yourself from that kind of environment because a part of it feels like you've capitulated and they won because they chased you out. And I was with a company for almost 11 years. And the last few years, I was having that discussion with myself. And I had an epiphany in the last year that when I leave this place, those folks are still going to be there chasing their tails and doing the same old nonsense and bullshit that they were doing every day, making each other miserable. Their life, their story, their circumstance won't change, but mine will, because I've gone off to pursue the next adventure, the next opportunity that will bring peace and quality to my life and my future. Staying in that toxic environment did nothing for the quality of my life or my plans for the future. And I think that's sort of where I have to balance whether I stay here or not. And perhaps the next election will tip the scales in one direction or another. But I need to see hope. I need to see progress. I need to see that other people are as invested in this fight as we have been over the last 6 years of our show. Because without that, I'm dishing water out of a boat that other people are just allowing to sink. Uh, that does nothing for me at the end of the day. And like I said, we deserve some peace. Now, hopefully, we can win the struggle and we can acquire it here. But at the end of the day, if I wind up relocating someplace else, I'd still consider that a win because I took control, manifested my own destiny, got off that hamster wheel, and are living by my own rules, my own choices, as opposed to those we're being spoon fed, our manufactured choices that we have here, which at the end of the day aren't even really choices. So I know that we have 5 minutes left. So before we get, uh, knee deep in another response, there is a Truth Brothers show on Thursday. What is good parenting? 7 p.m. Was that Pacific, 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time? So I'm not that's a very broad question, so they could be going anywhere with that. Tony, did you want to chime in on any final thoughts? We've got 5 minutes left. If not, then Reggie and I will continue.
but the thing is, we need to fight more. I mean, that's just the bottom line of it. And we need to fight at the voting booth. That's where I fight. That's the votes are what is what's going to win the war.
Absolutely. And we have, let's see here, I did a little bit of research and let's see here, at least one person in Texas is fighting for attorney general. Somebody in North Carolina is trying to become um, a member of the Senate in North Carolina. You've got, let's see, so that was Lee Merritt in Texas, Sherry Beasley in North Carolina, Anthony Brown in Maryland, Malcolm Kenyatta in Pennsylvania, Tamika Hamilton in Sacramento, Karen Bass in California, Virginia. Let's see here, Winsome Sears in Virginia, and Stacey Abrams in South Carolina, Mia McLeod in Oklahoma, Connie Johnson in Iowa, Deirdre DeJure. There are a lot of people running for office in 2022 in the next coming elections. So now is not a time for our people to be complacent. And we need to, if we want to see the change that we are also desperate to see, so that we can regain some control in our lives and pursue the so-called American dream that we've been told is possible, then we need to get off our asses and vote for these people in our respective states. Make it happen. Come on.
Well, I think this is the election cycle that's going to really determine what direction this country goes in. If we're not successful with this, I don't think we'll be successful in 24. Granted, midterms we're going to lose Congress, but I don't care if we lose Congress if we can pick up those easy seats for the Senate. Okay, like North Carolina is a seat that we should win. I mean, we should really win that seat in North Carolina. Um, a couple states out there where we have the opportunity to win. If we could get at least two more seats in the Senate, even if we don't get Congress back, we can push back on what Congress is doing and
Yeah.
still design bills that Biden would sign.
There's one other thing that we haven't mentioned, and we only have 2 minutes left, so I'll just say this really quickly. But, after the Civil Rights Act passed, um, and the 13th and 14th Amendments, what did you have? You had states passing Jim Crow laws that criminalized our
Hmm.
activity, put us on the chain gangs, and you're seeing that today with the criminalization of minor infractions, the criminalization of protesting, etc. And so the direct result of that was our men and women who've been incarcerated not being able to vote. So I think that once you've done your time, you've paid your dues to society. Once you're out, you should be allowed to regain your right to vote. And there are, see here, 3 states where you never lose the right to vote, about 11 or 12 states where you only lose it while you're incarcerated. Um, let's see here, about 10 states where it's lost until the completion of your sentencing or parole, and about 9 states where it's lost until completion of sentence. And there's a shift happening in a number of states to change that so that former felons can get their rights to vote again. If we can make that happen in all states and make those people recognize and understand the power that they have in their votes, we can turn the tide in some of these states. But we need to watch that legislation and promote it,
Excuse
pass it.
Very quickly, Florida had passed a law, even in a Republican state, before the last election. They passed a law where felons could have the right to vote. Okay, when they saw the numbers around 750,000, they said, "Oh, wait a minute. Those Most of those 750,000 probably going to end up voting Democrat. They're going to flip the state on us." Okay, so they went and added a caveat to it. You have to pay all your fines and restitution off before you can vote.
Mhm. Cue nonprofit organization being created to drum up money just to do that.
Well, we were working with an organization in my fraternity. We were working with an organization in Florida, civil rights organization that was trying to do that. The money just wasn't there, you know. And then the thing about it, when you try to get the records really cleaned off and expunged, you have to go to the court. You had to get in front of the judge and let the judge know that you have paid off your restitution, your fines and stuff, and the judge has will have signs off on it. Okay, it's just not go to the clerk of court office, pay the bill, and keep going. Okay,
As
they
if the
put
judge isn't busy enough.
yeah
That's
they
ridiculous. You've already
yeah
put in your time, paid your fines, and move on. Like, so this means that the judge has the option of saying, "Nah, I don't
oh
want to.
no
I'll
they
take your money, but nah."
oh no they can still vote long as they can prove that they paid everything, paid all the restitution and fines.
Yeah.
But so it was that the guy said it would just take too long to do it. They are still doing it, but the time consumption of doing it, So every time, everybody was praising Florida for doing it, but when they saw that the votes were going to flip to mostly Democrats, then they changed it and threw a caveat in and say, no, look, no, this is what you got to do first. Yeah, you got your right to vote, but until you can to get it fully. Make
And
sure
how's
you
that not a poll tax? How is
huh?
that legal? How is that not a poll tax? How is that considered legal?
That's because we don't control the floor of the House and Senate.
Hmm.
They can make these rinky-dink bills, and they know it's a rinky-dink bill to maintain control.
You do that, then let's flip the script and make it so that anybody who declares bankruptcy loses their right to vote.
Yeah,
You
they
know,
would.
anybody who owes taxes to the state or the federal government loses their right to vote.
Yeah,
Let's do it all the way. But the only problem with that is, there have been elected officials who propose that only landed aristocracy have the right to vote.
yeah,
But we digress, and it's after 9:30,
yeah.
so we may
So
have to take this up on another show.
we got to go.
Mhm,
So I know Tony will be putting curse words down at the bottom in a minute if we don't go. So
mhm, mhm. So it was a pleasure again, Reggie. Nice to be back in the States, sort of.
yeah,
Um, and we'll figure out what the topic is for next week.
yeah, you'll figure that out. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Oh, thanks. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank
We'll
you.
see how well I can do that while I'm lacking oxygen. But don't
you
forget to tune into Troop Brothers on Thursday night. What were you going to say?
no, I'm finished.
You finished? All
Yeah.
right. Peace. We out ya.
Peace. Catch you
Talk to you
later.
next week. Bye, guys.
Okay, good night. Bye bye.